Welcome to the garden. I have my soil test results and I'm going to share them with you. But first I'm going to explain why I went and got my soil tested in the first place. This year I've noticed that while the structure of my garden soil has looked really nice, my plants are not growing. I am watering them and they look okay, but they are showing signs of water stress. They're showing signs of not producing enough fruit. The fruit that they are producing is very mediocre at best, and that has not been the garden that I've had in the years past. So I got my soil tested. It was a really fun process. I did take a class on soil, and with that class, it provided me a soil test. So not only was I able to just get the results back from that, but I was also able to discuss with the class what my soil needed, how we can amend it, what we need to do for the future. So that was extremely helpful. I did go with my MU extension office to get my soil test done. And I will do that in the future. You can buy all kinds of different soil tests online, but what I loved about that one is I got to talk with someone from my area that knew about how I gardened. I could talk with her and discuss my soil test and what I needed to amend the soil and the best route for that. And it was nice to be able to talk with someone that actually knew the area and knew the soil that we had around here. She has done countless of these. She has a ton of background in this. And so it wasn't just a very standard soil test that I got online and they sent me their special products that they wanted me to use and things like that. So going with my extension office was excellent. Let's talk about how I actually took my soil sample. I went around to each of my garden beds that I have here and I moved the compost and the top layer that I have on the garden, and I went ahead and I dug down 4 to 6 inches and I put it in a plastic bucket. The plastic bucket is very important. You do not want to put it in a metal bucket because the ions could leach into the soil and that can alter your soil test. So I took a 4 to 6 inch sample from every single one of my garden beds. I put it in a bucket. I mixed that bucket up so that it was all incorporated from each of the beds, and then I put it in just a plastic Ziploc bag. I took it to my local extension office and they helped me with the rest. And what I learned about my soil was that it was very low in potassium. And what potassium does for the soil is it helps develop the fruits, and it also helps with water stress. And this summer with our drought, we had some water stress, but my plants showed it very quickly. Their leaves started to curl and the plants just acted like they hadn't got water even though they were getting more than enough. And that's because they were low in potassium. They didn't know how to handle it. And also the fruits or the produce that I was getting from them wasn't the quality that it should have been because it was lacking potassium. The 3 main nutrients that we're looking for is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. What you won't find on your soil test is going to be nitrogen because there is not a reliable way to test that. Nitrogen changes very fast in the garden soil. So if you're getting a soil test that tells you it has nitrogen, I don't know how well or accurate that is going to be. But the other ones, potassium and phosphorus, those can both be tested in the soil. And mine was low in potassium. And so when it is low in one of them, the plants cannot uptake the other 2 as well. So if it's low in one ingredient, it lacks in all of them. So your plants really struggle. That's why you want just a well-balanced soil, and that's why soil health is so incredibly important. Every year, I put on a top layer of this rich organic compost. And I thought that was enough. It's not. And as you can see, I also have straw down. But my soil was severely lacking in potassium. And so no matter how much compost I was going to put on it, it was not going to amend that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy potassium, because on my soil test, it told me at the bottom, it recommended that I have 3 pounds per 1,000 square foot. And so I had to figure out how big my garden was. That was the next step. So my first step was to test the soil, was to gather my soil test my soil, get my results back, and then I had my results, and now what do? I don't know. So I'm gonna give you a few tips on how to find the square footage of your garden if you don't know, if you have a large garden like mine and you don't know how big it is, and also how to read your soil test, because you're gonna get that piece of paper and you're gonna think, well, I don't know what the heck this means. So I'm gonna give you a few tips on that. My radishes here need to be thinned, and as I thin them, I'm going to explain to you and show you on the screen how to find the square footage of your garden space. If you have just standard raised beds, it's very easy. You just take your measurements and you can find your square footage. But if you have a large garden that is pretty long and you're like, I have no idea how many square foot that is, I suggest using Google Earth whenever you are trying to find the square footage. That goes for your yard. If you need to fertilize your yard, you can get the square footage that way. But on Google Earth, you open it, you find your house, and you can go to your space. You look at the space that you're trying to find, and on that screen, they have a measure tool. And what you want to do is you want to use the cursor, and you're going to highlight and mark around the perimeter of your garden space. If you have pathways and everything, that's okay. Just go around the garden space. We're just trying to get an estimate here. It doesn't need to be 100% perfect. We are home gardeners. And so you want to get an estimate of that space. You're going to go all the way around the perimeter, and there's a button. As you go around in a square, it will say close perimeter. You close the perimeter, and it finds the square footage of your garden. The square footage of this garden, I thought was 2,000 square foot. That's what I've been saying, but apparently it's not. This space that I have right here is about, it's right under 1,000. I did it a couple times. I have a big tree in the way on mine, and so it's kind of hard on Google Earth to really see where it is. But it's under 1,000. So what that means is my soil test told me that I needed 3 pounds per 1,000 square foot. I went out and I bought a 3-pound bag, and I sprinkled it all around before I started fall planting. Have I noticed a difference? No. Could take a while. They say the best time to do a soil test is actually in the fall, like it is now. And so that's great news for you. Go out, collect your soil, take it to your extension office. It took about 2 weeks for my soil test to come back. And like I said, I was able to have a nice conversation with the person at the extension office about what I can do with my soil, how I garden, and all that kind of stuff. And she had examples for here in my area. Every area is different, and the more you garden, the more you'll realize that, because even in our county that we live in, people that are in the northern end versus the southern end of the county have very different soils. And she has been here for a while, so she can really speak on that. So it's great to talk to someone from your local area. It's also great to talk to local farmers and local gardeners and just kind of learn all about your soil. Okay, I'm gonna finish this and I'm gonna give you a few more pointers on what to look for on your soil. Okay, so we've talked about the 3 main nutrients that are in the soil. So let's talk about a few more numbers that were on my soil test that I found very interesting. So the first one was obviously my pH. You want your pH between a 6 and a 7 if you're growing standard vegetables, fruits, most things. Mine was a 6.9. So I was worried. I was like, oh, that's really high. I need to try to bring that down. No, she was totally fine with it. She's like, don't stress about it. It's fine. Just do a soil test. We can kind of go from there. If you have a low pH, you're going to put on calcium, or lime, which is very prevalent in the area that I live in. And so most of the time people's pHs are way over 7 because we are taught to lime our gardens every single year or every other year. Well, that doesn't need to be the case if you do a soil test. And what I have found that a soil test really does, it saves you money. You spend a little bit of money, but then it saves you money. If you don't need to add things to your garden, why add them? Because all they do is leach into the soil, and they don't help you in any way. So you're wasting money. And I, for one, don't want to do that because I spend enough on my garden every year. So my pH was a 6.9. Again, you want between a 6 and a 7. You add lime if you want to bring it up, and you add sulfur if you want to bring it down. So that's kind of how you do that. But we're not going to be adding anything because ours was on a little bit, it was right at a 7, but she had no worry about that at all. And then the other number is a CEC number. And what that number does is kind of tells you the composition of your soil. My soil is very heavy in clay, and my CEC number was a 20. So anywhere between a 15 and a 40 is higher in clay, less than 15 or less than 10 is more sand, so all of those numbers vary. But what that CEC number also tells me is how my nutrients are in the soil. So since my CEC is at a 20, that means it is a little bit harder for my plants to use them, and the minerals and nutrients stick around in the soil because clay holds on to the nutrients. It doesn't really want to let that go. It is very rich in nutrients because it holds on to those nutrients, which also means you can use less because it's not quite as prevalent and your soil isn't giving it to your plants quite as easily. If you have a low CEC number, that means that your nutrients either go into your plants really easily or they leach out very easily, so you might have to put them on more often. The CEC number, you can't really change it. It kind of is your soil. It's just good to know. It's one of those things that's good to know about your garden. Your pH you can change, and again, the nutrients that are in your soils, you can change them as well. Just a simple soil test, you can learn so much. I'm trying to spread some of these black-eyed Susans around a little bit so I have a really nice wall of them. Another very important section of the soil test is actually more towards the bottom, and it is their recommendations. They will tell you how many pounds per square foot that you need to put on your garden beds. That is a recommendation. It is science-based, it's science-tested, all of those things. More is not always better. I know that as a gardener, sometimes I think more compost, more nutrients, it needs more nitrogen, and that's not always the case. So it is best to look at the recommendations that they give and go ahead and amend your soil. Like I said, the fall is a wonderful time to get your soil tested and amend your soil, because in the spring, you'll have a fresh new garden, and because it also takes a little while. If you are using organic or even inorganic, sometimes it takes a little while to break down in the soil, and so that plants are able to actually use those nutrients. It's not always a quick and instant fix. Your synthetics are definitely going to be faster. Your organics are going to take longer to break down, and they'll be in the soil. So whatever route you choose, fall is a wonderful time to start to get your soil tested and to amend your soil. I hope you found this video helpful on how to read your soil test, how to go out and get your soil tested, how to create a soil sample, and then what to do once you have your soil test back. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.